We interrupt this program with a public service announcement addressed to the NFL national media, to the Baltimore Ravens, and to the fans who walked out of the stadium last night. Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. We're here to talk about it today on the Ralph Rant. Let's go.
Welcome to the Ralph Rant, your source for hard-hitting Buffalo Bills takes. Now, here's your host of the Ralph Rant, that veteran watcher of generations of Bills teams, the prophet who predicted Josh Allen's greatness, that opinionated so-and-so you've walked out on parties because of, the Ralph.
Welcome to the Ralph Rant. I am your host, the Ralph. Thank you ever so much for being here. We are talking about the Buffalo Bills' miraculous comeback win against the Baltimore Ravens in Game 1 of the season, the Sunday Night Football opener. And before I get into this fantastic game and a lot of my thoughts on it, I do ask that you go ahead and smash that subscribe button, hit like on this video, and watch the whole thing because we're talking about a lot of great stuff. It definitely helps the channel. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers at some point here this season. Definitely appreciate the support we've gotten so far, but let's get into this game right now. And we're going to talk about it in a number of different fashions that might not be like other post-game shows where we're talking about how great Ed Oliver was and how great James Cook was and how great Josh Palmer was and how great Keon Coleman was and how great Josh Allen was and so on and so forth. I've left many out, and including the guy who's got more wrinkles than me, Mr. Prater, who happened to kick the ball between the pipes tonight to put the Bills up 41-40. What I'm going to talk about tonight on this podcast is how karma is a boy in a Bills shirt. It's usually a bitch, but tonight it was a boy in a Bills shirt. And then we'll talk about the tale of Bills season openers and sort of the pattern that has emerged throughout the Josh Allen era and the Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane era, but how tonight's game was different in that respect. And then we'll talk about the impact of this win on the season, on this historic season, the 53rd in the Ralph, in Highmark Stadium, as it's now called. And we'll continue with my feeling of this is what a champion team looks like, a championship club in the NFL, and why I believe that's the case. And I have believed it before, and I'm going to keep on doing it now. And finally, we'll talk about Sean McDermott, head coach, who got so much crap from so many people during that game and even during halftime live streams from Bills content creators that I saw, because the belief is not there. But they should have listened to the Ralph, because the Ralph has made predictions about this season, and at some point, somebody's going to start listening to them, including the one about being undefeated, and it started tonight. But let's blow the horn and get into this now and go. All right, let's get into these subjects here, and I'm going to start off with one I'm calling Karma is a Boy in a Bills Shirt. And karma had a big effect tonight. Karma had an effect on all of the betting public that put money on the Ravens to win this game when the Bills were favored in this and every single other game this season when we looked at the preseason outlook. And it was also served to those national talking heads who all had more trust in Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens, and less trust in the Bills and their MVP and their apparently terrible defense, and also to those fans who walked out of the stadium when the Bills were down and it looked like they were going to lose to many of them. But karma was especially a bitch in the form of a little boy who, as a Bills fan, shoved the helmet of DeAndre Hopkins after a Bills allowed a touchdown to the Ravens late in the third quarter. If you recall, it was a one-handed catch by Hopkins, which was miraculous. He caught it just past the goal line and was down. He was nowhere near the stands. And after he caught it and it was called a touchdown, Lamar Jackson comes running down also. And they managed to make their way right down to the fans in the end zone. And of course, at the Ralph, the wall is low enough to be able to do a leap into the stands, which they're probably glad they didn't do. But when DeAndre Hopkins ran by celebrating, after the Ravens had been trolling the Bills fans all evening when they had command of the game, this kid shoved the head of DeAndre Hopkins, shoved his helmet essentially, and then Lamar Jackson came by. The kid might have shoved his head a little bit also. I mean, what the hell were you doing that close to our fans in the first place? So Lamar Jackson comes up and gives the guy gives the kid, a two-handed shove backwards. The league will probably take a look at it. You got to know that ended up on the Jumbotron. You got to know that the fan base saw it, at least those that ended up staying. But you got to know that the Buffalo Bills saw that also. And what it is demonstrative of is, once again, just like the spitting incident the other night, when Philadelphia Eagles' Jalen Carter spit on Dak Prescott before the first snap of the game, this same business of shoving a fan at the Ralph, a Bills fan in the Ralph, you shoved a Bills fan at the Ralph. Are you out of your mind? It was showing on the Jumbotron, and the Bills saw this. And karma took over. And we might have to send Lamar Jackson, in fact, find out what charity, if he's involved with one, what charity's with, and send that charity money, $2 a piece for each hand that he used to shove that kid in the stands. Karma's a bitch, and tonight it was a little boy in a Bills shirt. Let's move on. Just about everyone who watched the outcome of this game tonight had to be surprised. Certainly, with the Bills getting trounced early, looking lethargic, looking like their defense was lost, Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry running wild against the Bills. Every time the Bills tried to come back a little bit and maybe had something good happen, once again, the Ravens offense came out, took the Bills right down the field, scored on most occasions. I think they only punted once at some point in the first half. And certainly there was the feeling that the Bills, of course, were going to get trounced by the Ravens, who are an excellent club, coming in, highly rated. But something happened. And something happened that usually happens. And it's happened in most seasons since Josh Allen has been here. First of all, there was the revenge factor. And most people think I'm talking about the revenge factor of the Ravens being defeated by the Bills in the divisional playoff last January on the icy field. And the pain the Ravens suffered when Mark Andrews lost that catch at the end, the 2-point conversion, and ended up that the Bills won the game. And we've seen this pattern with the Bills in this season opening situation many times. We saw them lose to the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2021, leading to the 13 seconds situation with the Bills losing to the Chiefs in the divisional playoff. We've seen it where the Jets actually got up on the Bills, I think 17-3 perhaps, 17-0 even, and the Bills came back with Josh Allen making throws to Smoke Brown, if you recall the game. And then we've also seen season-opening sluggishness from the Bills when the Bills lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then, of course, we saw it even when the Bills played the Jets once again in an opener, where on the fourth play from scrimmage, Aaron Rodgers ruptured his Achilles tendon, forcing Jets backup quarterback Zach Wilson into the game, which should have been a sure win for the Bills, but the Bills end up losing that contest. And then even last season, versus perhaps the up-and-coming upstart Arizona Cardinals and Kyler Murray, and of course, that same team had thrown Hail Murray on the Bills perhaps 2 seasons prior to that. But it was the same thing. The Bills were down 17-3 and ended up coming back. And truthfully, the Bills have demonstrated that comeback ability in a few of these games. But it wouldn't be surprising to see the Bills, of course, lose another opener. It's a long season. But tonight, that tale was actually retold. But I think the fact that the Bills were able to come back in the season opening game in this fashion, and of course there are no cupcakes, as they call them in college, in the NFL, but there are certainly teams that are expected to be less competitive. And in many of those season opening cases, the Bills were facing teams that were less competitive. Like I said, the Jets twice, the Cardinals, certainly. But tonight was not one of those lesser teams. Tonight was the Baltimore Ravens. And yet, this business of the Bills being able to come out after being very sluggish early in the season opener, and coincidentally, that just brings into mind how the Bills are sometimes sluggish coming out of the bye. Almost the same thing. But tonight's win was different. Tonight's win was different than all of those. Because this win will have an impact on the season that none of the others did. Stay with me because we're going to talk about it now. I love World War II movies. Just call me a nut about those things. And one of my favorites used to be Midway. I always loved Henry Fonda playing the part of Admiral Nimitz, the commander-in-chief of the Pacific Fleet. But the new version of Midway actually blows it out of the water, mainly because Charlton Heston is such an asshole in the first one. But in the new one, after our boys go out and knock out the first 2 Japanese carriers, they have to head back out. Actually, they knocked out 3 of them, but they have to head back out and get the 4th. And when they do so, they've already been shot at. It's been a rough day. And Dick Best, who's the leader of Bomber 6, who is a famous man, one of the most famous pilots in World War II in the Pacific, is telling his flying mate, Murray, that they have to go back out and get that last carrier. And Murray doesn't want to go with him. Murray is a little bit scared. Dick Best flies like he's nuts. He doesn't care if he's coming back. He's a true warrior. But Dick Best comes up and tells Murray that, look, I don't want to go out there either. I want to go back to my family also. But if we go out and do this and get this done, we'll be able to face anything that ever happens again. And that's war. Tonight was NFL football. But I have a feeling the biggest impact of this game, other than making the Bills a scary quantity for the rest of the NFL, is the fact that being down that far to that team, down 15 points with less than 4 minutes remaining in the game, to the Baltimore Ravens, to Lamar Jackson and to Derrick Henry, and to their high-paid safety, Kyle Hamilton, and coming back and winning that game, what do you think that is going to do to the Buffalo Bills' psyche? I can't imagine them facing any situation more difficult than that in a game that counts this season. And they were able to pull it off. Now, certainly, we'd all be cheering if the Bills had come out and beaten the Ravens, say, 34-20, that the defense looked miraculous, that Lamar Jackson and company looked lost, that John Harbaugh was pulling his hair out, trying his best to look like Sean McDermott. And if that had happened, Bills fans would be happy. No one would have left the stadium, certainly. And the nation would think, well, the Bills are a good team, as advertised. Let's get into the season and see how it goes. But it didn't go like that for the reasons we talked about in the last segment. Certainly, the Bills seem to have a difficult time in season openers and even coming out of the bye. They don't lose often in those, but they seem to have problems getting going and so forth. So again, if it had been just a big win for the Bills tonight, like I mentioned earlier, everybody would be, well, that's great, good. Bills are looking good. Looks like it might be a good season. But the way the Bills won tonight has to tell the team that there can be no situation that they could possibly be in that would be more daunting than the one they were in tonight. Down 15 points to the Ravens with under 4 minutes to go. And the fact that they came back and won that game tells me that they may be able to bring that fortitude together in any game this season, no matter how they've played, because they will know they have accomplished what they did tonight when the team essentially is brand new, is still getting better, guys need to get minutes to improve and so forth. And it brings to mind this note I have right here, because I predicted earlier this preseason that the Buffalo Bills will go undefeated this year. Very difficult to do. And there's only been one other team that's had a perfect season, and that's the 1972 Miami Dolphins. And in that season, a lot of really interesting things happened. First of all, they lost their quarterback for a while, and Earl Morrall played. But moreover, they beat the Buffalo Bills in probably the closest game of their entire season. I believe it was 24-23. And the Bills, frankly, were very close to winning it. Actually, a bad call, a bad defensive interference or holding call, I forget which, on Bills defensive back Robert James was called. And that actually put a stop to what the Bills were trying to do to beat the Dolphins. Now, of course, the Dolphins weren't the perfect team at that point. The Dolphins were a good team, and they had won a few games. I believe this was in October, if I'm not mistaken. So they're probably 4-0 by this point. Maybe it was the fifth game of the season. I can't be sure. But the fact that they got past their division opponent when it was that close had to instill in that team something that told them that they could pull off anything over the season. But they won it on a bad call. Tonight was not a bad call. Tonight was Josh Allen hearing Ravens fans shouting MVP in the stands. I think it got under his skin. Because the Buffalo Bills tonight demonstrated something that no other team has demonstrated in quite some time with that kind of comeback. It's perhaps like what the Chiefs maybe did early on with Patrick Mahomes. And yes, we saw Mahomes airborne the other night getting rid of a ball. But I told you in an earlier video, and I'll tell you again, There are dents in the Kansas City Chiefs that we will continue to discover as this season goes on. But the fact that the Buffalo Bills came from where they were and won this game tonight, which I am still trying to get my head around even, I have to believe that that is going to put something in this team to let them know that they are going to really be something this year. Because how can you ever be fearful of losing a game after you've gone through that and won? Go Bills. Let's move on. In the lead up to this game, we heard all about what champions look like. We heard from the national media after the betting line changed to favor the Ravens at the Buffalo Bills by 1.5. Let me repeat, the Ravens were favored by 1.5 at the Bills. And certainly a lot of money went on that side of the line. And certainly until about 4 minutes remaining in the fourth quarter, there was a lot of people out there licking their chops because this championship team of the Ravens that has the great Lamar Jackson, the great Derrick Henry, the great Zay Flowers, the great Kyle Hamilton, the great John Harbaugh, the great defense, that demonstrated it through much of the game also, that's what a champion looks like. Or we'll talk about, of course, the Eagles, and hats off to them. They are the Super Bowl champions. We'll talk about that is what a championship team looks like. Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, not Jalen Carter, Cooper DeJean, bunches of good players, Zach Bond, all of these players that are so good and put it all together. And they managed to get by the Dallas Cowboys in their season opener and are 1-0. And you can say that's what a championship team looks like. But I'll tell you what a championship team really looks like. You saw it tonight. You saw a defense with a lot of new members. You saw a defense that had a secondary that is really still learning. You had a 6th-round draft pick in Dorian Strong playing one corner and another 6th-rounder in Christian Benford playing the other. You had Cole Bishop playing safety, who many Bills fans want to run out of the town on a rail. You had a defensive line that people thought couldn't get any pressure. Actually, Dorian Strong was in the 5th round. It was Jackson Hawes, the Bills' 6th-round selection, that was also on the field. You had a Bills offense that doesn't have a number one receiver. This was not a team described as a champion with these great players in all these places. This was a team described as one, still described as one, as being held up by Josh Allen and Josh Allen alone. And if Josh Allen had a real receiver or a real head coach or whatever the hell else you want to say, that he would already have rings. No. A championship team is one that did what they did tonight, what the Buffalo Bills did tonight in the comeback. And when the Bills went down and scored the first touchdown in that last 4 minutes to make it 40-32, missed on the 2-point conversion. and then kicked off and got the stops against the Ravens, and then moved the ball down with 1:26 remaining and able to kneel it out until a kick that goes through the uprights with no time left on the clock by Matt Prater, who, like I said before, has more wrinkles than me. A team that doesn't have the confidence of everyone in the country, but turns around and wins a game like that. That's what a championship team looks like. Champions aren't made up of a full roster of stars. Championship football is played by being able to come back, by being able to keep your team together. And for all the people who talk about Sean McDermott as being a coach on the hot seat, a coach that can't get it done, a coach that is still trying to enforce his old-fashioned defensive notions on the guys that are actually running the defense. All those things that are said about Sean McDermott. No, because a championship team is one that takes what it has and is able to put together what the Bills put together tonight to win this game. And it all starts at the top with head coach Sean McDermott. And my last segment is going to pay tribute to that man and is going to put out a rant about people constantly trying to say that they need to replace him. It is insanity. But yet it continues. And we'll talk about it next and close out this post-game show for the ages. I have frankly grown tired of and am utterly sick of the Sean McDermott naysayers, the Sean McDermott haters. People that say that Sean McDermott is holding the team back, that say he's trying to enforce his defensive principles on the people that are really running the defense now, that even say he's trying to handcuff Joe Brady, Bills offensive coordinator, that say that hopefully the Bills might not do as well this season, so they fire McDermott and can make Brady the head coach. And all of this is patently absurd. And I'm tired of hearing about it. That team that put what it did together tonight on the field to win that game has one of the best leaders in the business. And what makes a great leader? Go read Jack Welch's book. Jack Welch, the ex-CEO, the famous CEO of the General Electric Company. And one of the things he says about leaders, that when you're in the room as a leader and you have your people around you, what you want is to be the dumbest person in the room. Because it's those people around you that you want to have of such good quality that you know you're going to accomplish what you need to accomplish. And Sean McDermott is a great leader. He keeps this team together. If you didn't see some of what he said in Hard Knocks, I mean, you're not watching because you've already got your mind made up about him. Great head coaches. Who are they described as being? Nick Sirianni, Super Bowl winning head coach. You had a player spit on the opposing team's quarterback before the first snap. Do you think that would ever happen on a Sean McDermott coached team? You had the Kansas City Chiefs with Andy Reid, perhaps the best coach ever, or as some might say. They went out the other night. That club's got dents. And a lot of people might have said the Bills have dents, but that club went out and I think even tied the game, but the Chargers were having none of it. And all we heard about is the Chiefs are back. They're going to be fine. They've improved. And could it get it done against their division rival, even when it wasn't in their division rival's actual house? They had to drag them down, the Chargers, that is, for a home game in Brazil. Sean McDermott is the leader of the Buffalo Bills. He is the head coach. He's not the defensive coordinator. He's not the offensive coordinator. He's none of those things. All of that is delegated. Very few give him the credit for even admitting himself how he's grown over the years and improved and understood it more and seen things happen and made mistakes and admit those mistakes and come up with the term fail forward and come up with the term humble and hungry. And he remains that. I don't want to hear another word about how bad a coach Sean McDermott is. Because the team that did that to the Ravens tonight, as far down as those Bills were, to come back and win that ball game, you do not do that without a good leader. I'd love to hear your comments on it, and we can get into it if you want, because there's going to be a lot more Ralph Rants, and we'll talk about those. So with that, I'm going to end it for tonight. Thanks so very, very much for watching. What did I say, washing? Yeah, they're washing their hands of that almost loss, turning it into maybe one of the greatest wins. It's got to be top 3 or 4 in the Josh Allen era, and maybe even higher than that because of the competition they faced. But thank you for watching the Ralph Rant tonight. Be good. God bless. Go Bills. I am the Ralph. This is the Ralph Rant. Out.